Hey guys, it's BlockchainBrad, and today we're talking with the CEO of Tomochain. His name is Long Vuong, and he's here today to provide an update for all those who want to know more about what's happening of late with Tomochain. Long, thank you very much for being on the channel today.
Thank you, Brad, for having me. It's always my pleasure to talk with you.
Likewise, and it's always a pleasure to get updates from the leading members of teams such as Tomochain. Now, it says on your website, once again, it's all about scalability. It's all about trying to provide the best and most scalable platform available, and everyone seems to be vying for that. Can we just do a quick recap, though, of what Tomochain's trying to do, what they're all about, so that those who perhaps don't know can get a quick recap or understanding?
So, Tomochain is a public blockchain protocol. We are trying to solve the scalability problem with Ethereum and other current public blockchain using our innovative techniques like masternode infrastructure, double validation, and randomization.
Sure, and we're going to talk about those in detail as part of the update, Long. But I wanted to just move across to Ethereum for a moment, for those, again, who really want to understand the value of this public blockchain you are representing. Now, you are EVM compatible, meaning you're compatible with the Ethereum virtual machine. Why is that so important, given that you are competing in this platform race and space?
In Tomochain, we think that there are a lot of work already being done on top of Ethereum and using EVM, Ethereum virtual machines. And we think that we should take advantage of the good work and useful protocol or useful smart contract already written on Ethereum. So by using the same EVM, people and developer can port their protocol and smart contract from Ethereum to Tomochain pretty quickly. And in the long term, we want to support EVM, and later on, web assembly which is a new standard for virtual machine on Ethereum.
Sure, that WebAssembly feature, when it comes to fruition, will be significant, and that cross-compatibility as well, given that, as you mentioned, the Ethereum network is so vast. It's the largest in the crypto space, and you're compatible with that first and foremost. What about your agnostic position? You're moving into your own platform away from the initial reliance on Ethereum as an ERC20. Is your plan to onboard or collaborate rather with other blockchains, with other such as Neo, such as Cardano, such as EOS, for example?
I think firstly, we have some good relationship with Ethereum, actually, we just met Vitalik in our office in the Hanoi conference, and I think for now we are trying to research on several direction in the on the Ethereum blockchain, for example, sharding and plasma sidechain. Later on, I think it's very important that on the main public blockchain can be connected in a way so that end user can actually move their asset from one chain to another. Sure. And we are very happy to talk and also collaborate with Neo, for example.
Well, that's exciting that you have that plan, that long-term vision for casting the net wider in terms of connecting with other platforms. But clearly, as you mentioned, you're really focused on the Ethereum platform. Can you tell us a bit more about the meeting you had with Vitalik, since you raised that? What was the nature of the discussions? What was the purpose of he seeing you?
I think it's just a fairly casual occasion, because some of the best projects from Vietnam, like Kyber Network, Tomochain, and BDAS collaborate and organize a conference on a legal framework for cryptocurrency and digital asset in Hanoi. And Vitalik was invited, and he accepted to visit Hanoi. And that's why I invite him to visit the Tomochain office. And I think the talk is fairly technical. We present what we are doing in Tomochain. We also talk specifically about our on-chain governance mechanism.
Well, it sounds like it was quite fruitful. Did you get the sense that Vitalik is a supporter of your technology?
I think Vitalik is a pretty nice person. Just from my impression, I think we don't talk about kind of like anything like competition or alternative chain or anything. We focus specifically about kind of like technology. What kind of technology is used, and how the technology can help to achieve certain goal. For example, for Tomochain is on-chain governance, right? There is a certain kind of like optimization of how the stakeholder can actually monitor and vote for the useful masternode that can actually secure the whole network.
Yes, and we're going to talk about that in detail with regard to your consensus. Or perhaps we could start with that, because obviously you have a unit consensus that's got a built-in voting mechanism. Can you tell us why that the consensus is important and why it differs from the others? Why you created it?
There are several ways to approach scalability, right? You can build sidechain, you can research and develop on sharding, which is a kind of like parallel computation. You can do something off-chain like Raiden or Lightning Network. So it's a payment channel. Mm-hmm. And another major approach is on-chain scaling. So basically, we impose the technical requirement for all the full node. So you have to have a certain amount of throughput, bandwidth, and processing power to be a master node and to actually support a stable infrastructure. And Tomochain is a combination of on-chain scaling with master node and a proof of stake. And we insert the voting strategy into the consensus, so we can make sure that the consensus is still very decentralized and still decentralized and stable. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, let's talk about some of the key innovations that you've published of late. One of them is known as double validation and randomization. Can we talk about that, obviously, in the context of your validation of layers, your security measures, essentially?
So our proof of stake voting have some similarity with delegated proof of stake, right? So in case of, for example, EOS, they have only 21 product producer who create the block and attach the block into the new create block and attach the block into the chain, right? Mm-hmm. So what POSV different from delegated proof of stake is that we have double validation. That means a master node, the first master node create a block, and then there will be a second randomly chosen second master node to validate the block before it is attached to the blockchain. And our research shows that it actually reduces the probability of fork and rebase and increases the security of the network.
Sure.
And randomization is a part of the equation because in the sense of distributed network, it's very difficult to actually make a random number, right? Mm-hmm. And if you don't actually have a random number, and some of the master node can predict what is the next number, they will try to game the system and create the next block by kind of like influence what kind of number is there.
But I'm sorry to interrupt, but what's the benefit though of having the randomization feature? Why is having this random aspect of it more mm-hmm. beneficial than something that is specific?
So like we have the first round of validation, the first round of block creation in round robin. So each master node takes turn to create a block, right? And of course, there is they have to deposit a token. So there is kind of like token economic incentive that the master node doesn't cheat, right? But we add a layer of just lead validation by having a second master node chosen randomly, because if it's not chosen randomly, right? The first master node can predict which one is the next validator. Then there can be a collusion.
I see. So it's about fairness.
Can collude and create a wrong block or double spending. And that's the reason why the second masternode have to be chosen randomly.
I see. So what it does, it ensures that there's no collusion, as you said. This mechanism is really just to, once again, reinforce that security and that trustability. If we could talk about now your governance as well, because there's a built-in governance system with your dApps. That's a new feature as well.
Yes. I think here we really support the idea of having an explicit on-chain governance model, right? So on the major economic decision, like the inflation rate, the number of masternode, for us, it should be decided on-chain by the collective of masternode. And of course, there will be discussion of chain, but the history of chain should be recorded into the blockchain using the on-chain governance voting.
Right. So again, it's more democratically driven. Let's go with the discussion of masternodes. You have mentioned them several times. Now, my understanding is that there's a specific number of masternodes. There's certain amounts that people can invest, or they can stake rather, to become a masternode. So tell us about the process of the masternode itself.
So the voting model for masternode is as to be a candidate, right? You have to deposit 50,000 TOMO, and then coin holder can vote for you. And top 150 candidates become masternode.
Okay.
And the voting is dynamic. It happens every half an hour, so around 900 blocks.
Wanted to ask you, with respect to someone interested in taking part in the masternode program, how many in total are there? How many masternodes are available?
There will be a maximum of 150 masternodes.
So there's not many really available. And from my understanding as well, there's a passive income system so that people can do it from two ways, one from the DEX and one from, as you were mentioning, from the epoch, the 900 block epoch as well. Can you talk us through the passive income stream that someone would be able to receive over the course of, let's say, a week or a year if they owned a masternode?
I think in the general sense, I think the blockchain is a kind of autonomous, decentralized autonomous network, right? And the people who secure the network should be rewarded. And that's why there is a block reward, right? And for example, like Bitcoin, they have a block reward that's happen every 4 years or something. And then so there will be also the transaction fee going to the block reward.
Right. So how much would they receive if they were a masternode successful candidate where they were accepted by the I guess the government?
It's actually quite dynamic in the sense. So think about it in this way, right? We have a fixed number of token for reward in every epoch. That is 900 block, right? The reward will be divided to on the masternode proportionally to the signature they sign given that epoch. So they actually have to be online and sign the block and validate the block to get the reward. And then the reward for each masternode will be divided between this particular masternode and all the voter who vote for the masternode.
I see. So just to get some ballpark numbers I've written down from the information online, is that it kind of equates as to what you're saying with approximately about 225 TOMO weekly for those who have the masternode, all the way across to just over 11,500 TOMO for the year. So that's substantial. That is a genuine passive income stream, even at the price that we're talking about now, which fluctuates daily, if not by the minute. But I think, I did want to ask you with regard to the DEX, that's coming. Can we talk about that for a moment in conjunction with this, in terms of how the masternodes are going to benefit from the DEX that's planned?
I think we have the DEX in design at the moment. We are going to publish like maybe 4 or 5 page design paper. Next is the next 1 or 2 months. But we already, I think, have a design in place, and we plan to have a beta, alpha version, alpha or beta version in the Q1 2019.
Okay.
One of the very exciting thing about Tomochain Dev is that it will be supported by the consensus. So the order matching is actually happening on the consensus layer. And it is very different from all the DEX available right now. I think you should wait for the design paper. Everyone, who are excited about like just lead trading. So you don't need to use a centralized exchange. You just have the private key and you can make a trade very easily, very efficient.
Okay, so it sounds
Tomochain
like
can do that. Yeah.
So you're going to make it quite easy, and we'll learn out how you do that with regard to that aspect. Now, I just want to ask you one more thing about the master node itself. Now, say someone does want to contribute, and they do have the 50,000, the equivalent, I guess, fiat currency to purchase 50,000 TOMO, or say they're building up their own stack of TOMO. Let's say they achieve that and they become a potential candidate. Talk us through the process of how they are approved as one of those 150 masternodes, because it doesn't just mean automatically that they become a masternode, does it?
Yes, you have to belong to top 150 most voted candidate. Then
and how does that happen? But talk us through that process of voting. How does someone become voted into that 150 core group?
Okay, so we actually have a software called TOMO Master, which is our governance app running right now. So the idea here is that you can initiate a candidate by sending your token into a smart contract, right? On-chain smart contract. And the smart contract will keep your token there. And then you will be moved to the list of the candidate. The website is accessible by everyone, so the coin holder can go into the website and look at the list of the candidate. And if they want to stake, right, voting in Tomochain also means you are staking your coin to secure the network. For example, you have 1,000 TOMO, and you look at all the data we have about the masternode, and you like you can send your 10,000 token or 1,000 token into the smart contract, and the system will record that 1,000 TOMO belonging to that certain candidate.
The question I have though is, what makes someone want to choose somebody else? So say for some, what makes a voter want to choose a candidate who's trying to become a masternode?
Okay, so the idea here is that the reward for the masternode is proportionally to the number of signatures they sign. So they should not be offline, right? Because if a masternode being offline, that means the reward will be less. And then if you miss your turn to validate because of your machine is too weak or something, then the reward will be less. And all the coin holder, because they have a portion of the reward, they will move to other masternode instead.
Right.
So I think the idea here is that it's just the coin holder is going to optimize the reward, the return for staking. And the strategy here is to vote for the least voted masternode. That's actually the optimal strategy, is to vote for a candidate which will become the masternode, but then it should not be like the candidate that get both votes, but the candidate that gets the less vote.
Sure. Now, how long do they retain the position of a masternode holder? How locked in is that? Is there a period of time where that person acts as the masternode, and that's an assured?
So the system is pretty dynamic in the sense that we have a block reward block every epoch, and every epoch, right, the list of masternode is being recalculated, right?
Right.
So you can resign, right? When you deposit 50,000 TOMO and become a candidate, after a while you need money, you don't want to be a masternode anymore, you can resign. And then you will get back the token.
Sure. So essentially, really, it's the ultimate form of staking. Now, if you don't have the 50,000 TOMO, you can still stake with some of those masternodes. Is that right?
Yes. We actually have a kind of like structure already built in the sense that the staker knows that how many percentage of the reward they will get from the masternode. If the masternode, if the candidate actually become a masternode,
right?
And
okay.
The reward for the staker, there will be like 40% of the total reward going to the masternode for the infrastructure service, and 50% of the rewards will be distributed to the staker.
Okay, so that's how those who stake less than that amount can still benefit and receive some sort of TOMO income, passive income from their stake.
I actually try to avoid the idea of income because security law and everything.
Yes, I do apologize for the terminology. It's very difficult
I mean,
for me.
I think it should not be kept like a worry, but in the sense that we a team, right? In Tomochain, we are designing the system, right? And all the masternode will be from everywhere.
Yes, and to clarify, I totally respect what you're saying.
Yeah.
What essentially is happening is you're generating utility tokens for the ecosystem that ultimately that person can decide how to utilize that token. But certainly they're generating, just as NEO does with its utility token, it generates offerings for those who are the stakeholders essentially through its the NEO token. So yeah, I mean, regardless of how we imbue it, the reality is it has value. So thanks for clarifying that. Now let's talk about your sharding. Now you mentioned that there's a plan in the pipeline for sharding to really innovate your scalability, which is currently around 2,000 TPS, I think. So talk us through the plan of where your TPS is now, your transactions per second capacity, and where you're moving to.
So with the current designs with masternode infrastructure, we are doing around 2,000 transactions per second, and the next step in the scalability is to incorporate sharding into the network. And with sharding, we believe that the system can go up to 30,000 transactions per second.
And that's quite substantial comparatively when we look at other platforms. How long is it going to take to make that applicable and usable?
So for now, I think it's a very good research direction. But if you look into it, right, Ethereum is doing 15 transactions per second, and after the bull run last year, there is no issue with congestion or transaction fee at the moment. So I think in terms of like actual US, our mainnet with 2,000 transactions per second is pretty good already.
I would tend to agree, given the comparison with the 15 TPS of Ethereum. But the question, comes is what happens when Ethereum does start to really scale with new technologies that they on board? I was reading an article today that there's new things coming that would suggest it could really move into thousands soon. Are you concerned at all, about these kind of innovations of other platforms as you build out your own TPS, or do you think that people worry too much about it in the public domain from feedback, when really Ethereum was coping okay at a very minimal amount of TPS?
I think the more important thing for blockchain right now is to find really good use case and application. There was like 2 weeks that Ethereum have trouble with a lot of transactions. So our game plan is to have the mainnet with our current technology, and we actively research sharding and incorporate sharding into our mainnet. But I'm not quite worried about kind of like it's like UX UI issue, right? If you send a transaction, it takes only 2 seconds on Tomochain, you pay like 0 fee, and if everyone is still doing that and happy with that, then I don't see an urgent need to scale the system right away. So it's better, to make sure that the design is secure and stable.
Mm. It's really interesting that you say that because, you know, one of the things that you do claim to be is a scalability centered or focused blockchain design. So really you've got the scalability down pat. It sounds like that you're well and truly on target. You're achieving all those milestones. Let's now talk about something a little bit more complex, and that's your parallelization, how you're building out the side chains as well. Is that also in sync with the sharding, or is that something different?
You mean the part about EVM
Yes,
parallelization?
right.
Yeah, that's one direction we are doing research on. Yeah.
Okay, so currently research phase. Now let's talk about hardware integration. That's another thing that's in your development plan. How's that going?
So the hardware is actually, we probably will have a team working on it, probably like the end of the year.
Okay, so lots happening by the end of this year. Let's now talk about your dApps, because there's a few that's come on board since we last spoke. How many dApps are running on the Tomochain platform now?
So because we don't have the mainnet yet, so it just the testnet. And we have several good team running and testing our testnet right now. For example, ChipMe, the travel marketplace application, and of course the Big Bomb advertising. We also have, for example, T-Food is one of the good one with a lot of real user, real product running and testing our testnet now. I'm looking forward to the mainnet so they can actually swap the token and run their application on Tomochain.
Right, now let's talk about that a little bit more in detail, because currently they're running on the testnet, as you said. You have, I'm not sure what the number is, and we'll clarify that, but you have quite a few onboarded at the testnet level. Why is it so important for them to be able to move into that, to the main net? And what does it mean for them when we're talking about those atomic swaps?
I think mainnet is important because the token have real value, right? At that time, the token running on it actually have value. Because public blockchain, for me, I think from my personal point of view, the most valuable thing about public blockchain is it's a platform to carry a lot of financial value. And the token on testnet is just for testing, right? And the token on the mainnet is actually value and assets.
Right. So what about the date? When is that going to happen, Long? The actual test, the mainnet. When's that set for?
We are still on track to do the swapping in the fourth quarter this year. I think in December. Actually, the coding should be completed in the next 2 or 3 weeks, and then so we move to the phase of stress testing, auditing the network.
Right.
And preparing for the swapping. Yeah.
You must be very busy with your team. How is your team going? Has it grown since we've last spoken?
We're growing every month. So,
well, tell us about that. How is it growing? What's the number currently?
So I think we have 2 offices. One office in Singapore right now. Have a BD team there. The office in Hanoi have all the engineer and product and technical development. We have 25 people in Hanoi, and I think 15 is working from product and engineering side.
Okay, so you've got 40 people roughly between those 2 offices, and my understanding is that
I mean like we have like about 30 people.
30.
Singapore office only have very few people there. Yeah.
Okay, and what about Tokyo? Apparently, you've got an office coming.
We will make an announcement in October, right? But I think it's okay because I already talked about it in the Telegram channel. We're going to open Tokyo.
My apologies there. I heard you speaking with Shil Nai in Thailand. That's the only reason why I mentioned it.
Oh, don't worry. Yeah. So
to be continued, we'll leave that one so you can have an announcement, but it is exciting that your offices are building. Let's talk about your advisors. How's everything going with the advisors? And I want to broach them only because, as an update, are your advisors still doing things with you post-ICO?
I think some advisor I work with more, and some advisor I don't work with often. So we are doing like biannually, kind of like evaluation of own, team performance and also relationship building, that kind of thing. So I work closely, still work very closely with Rosalind, Signum Capital, a lot of other funds that supported since the beginning.
Right. And what about other platforms? Obviously, you are the co-founder previously of NEM. Are you have any specific alignments with them, for example, because of your experience and connections there?
We are working on our own roadmap, and they working on their own roadmap.
Okay.
So at the moment, right? I think so. We meet in the conference. We say hello. I think that's about it.
Right. So you are well and truly solely and wholly about Tomochain now. What about your wallet? Talk us through some of the tech with regard to the wallet integration. How's that gone?
So we have the mobile wallet launching. I already tested the demo. So the idea here is that we want to have our own mobile wallet that can support Tomochain and all the app on the Tomochain. And I think there is another direction, right? Having a wallet support a lot of other chain. For example, Trust Wallet, ARM token. So they are the wallet that support a lot of chain. And we are also talking with other wallet so that they can add Tomochain into their list of chain support. Yeah.
Right. So obviously the access will really build. If we could talk now about your token stats, just for those who want to perhaps better understand the scarcity factor of Tomochain, it is relevant. Now, can we clarify with you, Long, is it correct in saying that there's a total supply of 100 million?
Yes.
And your current circulating supply is just over half that of 55 mil?
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so I want to talk to you about that with regard to comparisons with other blockchains, the platforms like Ethereum. Why is this scarcity important, given that you have this finite number, exactly the same as NEO, in fact, with regard to the total supply, with regard to the overall value and your 8-year plan as well?
I think on the idea of total supply, right? Total token supply. I'm pretty much, I think I like the idea of fixed supply and immutable fixed supply from the beginning. So there will be no kind of like uncertainty and no kind of like,
right.
kind of like worry about the supply can increase in the future. Yeah.
And that's where you differ from Ethereum, who doesn't have a fixed supply as you do. Is that
one
right?
of the things I wrote in the economic paper is basically the economic policy should belong to kind of like the collective of the masternode via certain kind of like on-chain governance. We actually are still working on that. For example, like the idea of so we know that Tomochain is actually kind of like having the core chain that allows you to create token to create token on the blockchain, and the debt exchange is something built in very native to Tomochain as well. So the block reward, of course, the block reward will come from the reserve at the beginning. Like we published our economic paper, there will be 17 million tokens distributed as block reward over 8 years, right? And then what happened after 8 years, right? So you have the fee from the decentralized exchange that will go to the block reward too.
But the thing is that within that period of time, up until 8 years, there are block rewards set in motion year in, year out, and they gradually decline. So in your first year and your second year, it's 4 million total of TOMO, and then it drops down. I've just got written down here for the third and fourth years to 2 mil, and then down to 6th, 7th, and 8th year, it's only 1 mil. So why have you done it that way? Why have you structured it so that there's a block reward system post mainnet?
We make the assumption, right? And as a network mature, right? And there so will be a lot of valuable token on top of Tomochain. Then the fee from the swapping system on the decentralized exchange will make up for the reduced block reward. So hopefully we keep capitalize the return on running a masternode is a number that the full node will have the incentive to actually running and securing the system.
Right. So obviously you've really built in a very clear and viable metrics and token system so that it, for the long term it's going to retain its value. And what is interesting again is that you're one of very few platforms that does have a very scarce number comparatively. Once again, to reiterate, it's only 100 million in total for the overall supply. Now, funding, I wanted to talk to you about that. How is your funding going? Given you've done your ICO, how is your capital reserves? Do you have enough money to keep building this?
We should be fine for the next 3 to 4 years, right? At the ICO, I think we already wrote that we raised for 4 years to run away, right? So, and of course, there is a downturn in the Ethereum price. Luckily, we have a very good kind of like treasury management. So we avoid the bad effect of the Ethereum falling in the price. And so the team is very well, not very, we are not rich yet, but we are happy with what we have. And we have enough runway to complete on the roadmap. And of course, later on, as an entity, we are, the team are going to do some other things that generate revenue too.
I see. So you really have the capital now. Do you have enough money built into the plan though to build out the team itself as well? Because you talked about you've got enough funds to sustain the team for a few years, 3 or 4. But do you also have more capital to invest into more people to build out the potential of the ecosystem?
I think that have to come from the reserve in TOMO. So we actually have some plan going on. So hopefully we can have a fund that can support the app on top of Tomochain.
And what about your outlook with regard to, you mentioned the bear now, and obviously that's had an impact on the price of Ethereum. You've moved your money across to secure, and stabilize your position. But what is your view generally of the ecosystem, the whole ecosystem of cryptocurrency and blockchain? Are you optimistic that things will change in the next few years?
Yeah, I think like I was in crypto since 2014. So the bear market in 2015 and 16 was pretty bad as well, especially in 2015. So I think the bear market may still go on for 1 more year or something. But I think the whole industry, right, the cryptocurrency and the crypto asset industry is only growing more in the future.
Right, so long-term bullish. What about products? With regard to, you've got TOMO Scan, TOMO Stats, TOMO Faucet. Just in a nutshell, each of these are important, obviously, for the next step of innovation. What are they, and why did you build them?
Okay, so let's think about it in this way, right? We are a team. We are working on the core blockchain protocol, and I remember when I did project with NXT and NAM, there will be a lot of kind of like outside developer want to build a blockchain explorer for you, and wallet they build for you for free, and Faucet for free. But I think it's actually quite competitive to have the attention of the kind of like developer or community now. So the core team here working on the chain, but we're also working on more closely related application. Tomo Scan is an open source version of Etherscan, right? Tomo Master is our on-chain governance app. These two are very important. We have a wallet, web wallet and mobile wallet. We have the forces, so everyone can actually go there and add for a small amount of test token to test the system. And then the decentralized exchange is the next big thing, right?
Right.
Decentralized exchange is supposed to be kind of like the application level, but we actually have a way for the consensus, especially on the order matching. The consensus will support the order matching of the decentralized exchange, so
Right, and
it can move actually faster. Yeah.
it's going to be really exciting to see that DEX development as well on Tomochain, and yeah, that's happening next year, isn't it? In the first
Next
quarter.
year, yeah.
Right. Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking to you about that then. What about STOs as well, Long? Are you concerned about their propensity for the movement generally across to security token offerings as opposed to the current ICO landscape, or do you see them moving together and ICO still being relevant?
I think the ICO is still relevant, but I think the access to successful ICO will be limited to company with already large user base.
Mm.
In this year, right, we have a lot of projects can raise money with only a white paper, but it's not going to happen again now.
I see what you're saying. So there's going to be new requirements.
Utility token are still having a role, I think, especially for on a decentralized network. But then for as a kind of enterprise and business, I think SDO is very exciting. Along there, we can resolve a lot of governance, not regulation issue.
Well, talk us through that in relation to Tomo, though. How does the STO fit into Tomochain, given that you are really essentially now currently designed as an ICO platform, in the sense of you're trying to really enable DApps to onboard and be functional, as you mentioned, and be real eventually once post mainnet?
If you think about it, right, so I think for me, the standard, right, for example, security token standard should come after we already have a demand and the regulation, resolve. So you can definitely use Tomochain for issue security token. You can actually build a certain platform on top of Tomochain for security token. It's very similar to what Polymath and Haber is doing on Ethereum right now. So on the technical side, right, I don't think security token is difficult. It's actually quite straightforward to build a certain security token platform. What is more kind of like the roadblock is on the governance, on the regulation side.
I see. And what are your thoughts on regulation with regard to those who are proponents for zero regulation and complete decentralization? Are you a supporter of regulation? Do you want to see that happen?
I think like the people, right? I think I'm on the side of liberty, right? I like people can do what they can without harming others, and they can do that. Government should not involve unless there is some kind of like imperfection in the market or something, right?
But is that idealistic? Do you think that's realistic, given that we're talking about business and we're talking about governments, we're talking about money, we're talking about currencies? Do you think that there needs to be some sort of governance model that the government is willing to support, or the SEC, for example?
I think the government is like kind of like get used to how the blockchain works, get used to kind of like the global nature of the blockchain. But it's not something insidious or something bad, right? Because for example, money laundering is very difficult on blockchain because it's so transparent. Right. Because you have an argument going for Zcash as a thing, but I don't think any kind of like black marketer or money launderer is using blockchain at the moment.
Well, we saw initially
in the last scale, right?
Right. Initially, the privacy coins were an issue, certainly, and we saw all kinds of things being purchased via the dark web via, I won't even mention the currencies, but you certainly would be privy to that knowledge as well. But now we're seeing a much cleaner use case for blockchain and for cryptocurrencies overall. But you know, for the future though, are you pro regulation, and are you pro trying to restructure some sort of cohesive governance system with regulation and rules so that we can, I guess, build out the ecosystem properly, and particularly for
I'm working with the government, for example, government from Vietnam. When they need consultation, I talk to them, right? Especially in terms of like the government should support innovation, should support kind of like financing for small and medium startup, right? Because that's where they need the money.
Well, it sounds
in terms
like
of technology, yeah, in terms of technology, right? So blockchain is very global, and in contrast with regulation tend to be very local. Of course, there will be overlap, but you know, the regulation in China generally do not apply with people in United States. So for me, like blockchain is a kind of like technology representation of liberty and have like the freedom to do business globally.
Absolutely. So blockchain's breaking down the borders, it's globalizing people, it's globalizing business, and it's doing it in a way that's never really been done with the degree of decentralization that we now see. Clearly, you are a supporter of that kind of business model, and you're leading one of the key platforms of the globe with Tomochain. You're certainly leading the #1 from Vietnam right now. It's been an honor speaking with you. You are the CEO, and I really look forward to hearing more about the DEX as you move into that, and certainly get an update in the Q1 period, perhaps, or even later in the year as you continue to develop. You have made key developments already. You've shown that with the growth and discussion today. Thank you again for your time, and all the very best with your team and your tech as you build out.
Thank you, Brad. Yeah. Thank you for the interview, and for all the audience watching this interview.
You're very welcome. Thanks, Long.